Public hearing of the Salem City Council Board is being held here at City Hall Council Chambers on February 19, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in accordance with Chapter 48, Section 5 of the Massachusetts General Laws for the purpose of discussing a zoning ordinance amendment relative to business neighborhood zoning, Section 3.1, Table in Principle and Accessories Use Regulations. Notice of this hearing was posted on February 12th, 2025 at 8:52 a.m. and advertised in the Salem News on February 5th, 2025, and also on February 12th, 2025. Absent from the Salem City Council are Councilors Varela, Hapworth, Stott, and Davis. Chair Rita, would you like to open your meeting?
Yes, please. Thank you. Jonathan Burke.
Present.
Zach Counter.
Present.
Ellen Sides.
Present.
Tom Fury. Present. Kurt Reader is present. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. So I'll go first because I'm the one who brought the order back to the council. And just for the public's edification, when something doesn't move forward, the calendar year has to expire. And so once it did, at the end of the year, I brought the order back. And I'm going to be brief because a lot of what we do through this process is, the planning board does ask questions, councilors ask questions, but then the planning board has 21 days to get recommendations back to the council for us to deliberate on. And one of the things I was thinking about is when the residences on Canal Street, also known as the Bertini Project, was before the planning board, school committee counselor, planning board member Fury actually said something I didn't agree with 100%, but it made me think about this. And that was, he asked the developer why they weren't creating a neighborhood within the complex. And it's, you can't create a neighborhood with a building or 5 buildings. You create a neighborhood such as this. Once that complex is finished and the 250 apartments are occupied, people will be able to walk to Doobies, which is in a B1. They can walk to the Big Apple, which is a little grocer on the corner. They might actually go around the other side and walk to Loring Ave, where there's another grocer, and a place that actually serves, is a restaurant that sometimes serves alcohol. Or they could walk down the really cool coffee superhighway on Canal Street. So they don't have to really go very far. And one of the premises of the mayor putting this before us last year was the idea that, instead of forcing everyone into a small area downtown, is that people, don't have to necessarily use their cars, which it creates a lot of traffic and potential accidents or whatever. And there's places that they can go and shop and meet their friends. I've said this before. When I've been to Doobies, for example, I usually see people I know. I don't know if there's a lot of people who are tourists from Alabama or Europe or Australia who are like, hey, where's Doobies or Tin Whistle, whatever. So there's one other really important point, and that is that we have zones that are considered by right. So, for example, a B2 is by right. And, if someone wanted to open one of these establishments, they could do it. They would still have to get whatever appropriate license they do from whatever, board or, permit through the city, building department or whatever. But if this passes, they not only have to do that, but they have to go through the zoning board. So typically when you look at the zoning charts, you could make it go from an N, which is not allowable, to a Y, which would make it by right, And in this case, it goes from an N to a BA, which is, Board of Appeals. And then if they get through that and get their special permit, they still have to go get their appropriate license and whatever they need to do to the city permitting, the engineering department or whatever. I did want to say one other thing, and that is, gotten a lot of emails about the quality of life in the neighborhood. And there's all these places. There's something like, it's hard to tell because some of these B1s are literally one parcel. Like the one parcel on Glover Street, the president and I could not figure out what was there 70 years ago and why that was there. But there's about 23 or 24 B1s, and 7 of them are in Ward 5 for some reason. And, I tried to figure out why they exist. I understand, why doobies or, exists or whatever. But where the Babe is, which used to be Majors, and I can't remember what was there before in 1965 when this bill initially passed, when the zoning did. But that building is not in the B1. But the parcel next to it, which is a building that is really residential now, I don't know, was that because the people who own that bar where the Babe is didn't want competition next door? I mean, why is that in the B1? There doesn't seem to be an apparent reason. So, I do feel like if we surveyed the people who live in the neighborhoods who go to the, Dottie and Ray's or the VFW or Mercy Tavern or, Tin Whistle, I think, or the little grocers that exist in their areas, and hopefully someday some daycare centers, I don't think they'd want to lose those. So that's why I put this in front of us, and I'm looking forward to getting the recommendation back from the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Jurzo.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. I just want to say a few words. As a representative for many residents in Ward 1 that these zoning change would affect, I must strongly oppose revisiting the B1 zone changes. Just 6 months ago, the council approved a zoning change in a B1 zone that permitted a retail store, family daycare, home office, and since then, to my knowledge, there have been no new applications for these uses. Yet here we are again. This time, the proposal aims to open the door to commercial recreation serving alcoholic beverages. I wholeheartedly support the development of new businesses in our city, but they must be developed properly and in ways that do not negatively impact the residents who choose to live in these neighborhoods. It took years to form these zoning ordinances. Changes to them should not be made overnight without extensive public input sessions and careful considerations of all the residents affected. I have listened to numerous residents from the Derby Street neighborhood who have voiced their strong opposition to the zoning change for several reasons. Their concerns include increased parking difficulties, more frequent delivery truck issues, heightened noise, disturbances from patrons such as smoking or vaping outside residential windows. And Derby Street is already a very dense area, and adding another establishment of this nature will undoubtedly amplify these problems. Furthermore, Salem is home to over 80 liquor establishments. In the 12-block neighborhood of Derby Street, there are 16 establishments that serve food and alcohol. I ask, how many more do we truly need in this city? Thank you.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Prosnewski. I'd also like to reiterate what Councilor Cohen had said, that this was submitted in the spirit of creating more walkable communities. If there's more amenities and services in a neighborhood, that actually can lead to fewer cars coming in and out of their neighborhoods for the services they're looking for, and also that there is a permitting process in place that is it's not all of a sudden all these businesses and alcohol opportunities are just going to pop up everywhere. There is a thoughtful process in place here, and for the record too, we have received many emails, some against, but also several from residents in support, which included Derby Street. So I just want to have that on the record as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, President. I will again say that I am for this, as I was last time. My reasoning hasn't changed. Overly restrictive zoning is what has created a lot of the problems that we have in Salem, including too many cars on the road. These B1 zones were created because there were these businesses there already within residential zones. And so in order to make them legal within a residential zone that restricts businesses, they had to create these B1 zones. So there were already restaurants with liquor licenses. There were already any of the things found in the B1. They were already there. So to say it's okay for Doobies to be there, it's okay for the Tin Whistle to be there, it's okay for these other restaurants that have liquor licenses, but no more. Still, I scratch my head trying to figure out what was the underlying concern when the people created that zoning. What were the issues involved there? Like people that they know, people that they love, that we all love, own these restaurants and have great businesses. And it's okay for them to have their liquor licenses and their restaurants that are very successful and they're great businesses in Salem. And so I really don't understand why a new business that might be next door to the Tin Whistle, why that would be a bad thing. So I will say, we have gone through this whole discussion just a couple months ago. This isn't an overnight thing. Zoning does take time. There is a very long, drawn-out process, which we must go through, which is why we're here again tonight, doing the same thing again tonight. So this isn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision that's being made. It also has to follow that same process. The last one took months. This one is also going to take months because that's what the process requires. So just again, I am still for this, and I look forward to whatever vote is going to happen in a couple of months.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President Presnewski. I want to reiterate the comments made by Councilor Cohen, Merkel, and Marcillo. I support this. I supported it the last time we saw it. I argued very hard for it. I'm extremely frustrated that we are all going through this again, to have the same conversation again, because honestly, it should have passed when it came in. It had strong, vocal public support across varied channels, including here in the space, but also through email, other sources, phone calls. This is important. Just a couple of reminders to add to all of the vocal support here tonight, that this is really not about one single neighborhood. It is about the entire city. And within our entire city, we are also only talking about 2% of the commercial parcels. And this is an open market. And I think that new business is a good thing. And I think that if someone is concerned there are 16 restaurants on Derby Street, then maybe someone, I don't know, is concerned they won't be competitive and doesn't open another one. Like, this is an open market. And I think that all we can do is support flourishing businesses and support small business owners, almost all of whom are Salem residents. So support our neighbors by offering this expansion. And I think that it's incredibly misguided to say that there's not been enough public process. As Councilor Marcillo just stated, these conversations are always public. The record is public when you send an email to us. There's a way to engage with us on channel, off channel, here in this space. There have been substantive conversations here in this space. This is a second joint public hearing on the matter. I don't understand. This is not a quality of life issue, in my opinion. Being the predominantly downtown ward councilor, sharing those downtown borders with a couple of other wards. where we have a very heavy business district, a ton of congestion, both residential and commercial, a ton of congestion when it comes to traffic and public transit. I welcome the opportunity to spread the wealth. I welcome the opportunity to support our neighbors by developing further walkable communities so that everybody has something right where they are to congregate and gather and be together in community. So with that, I will yet again reiterate my vocal and bold support. Thank you.
Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, President. I keep hearing everybody say walkable communities, but what about the residents that already live there that are going to have to deal with people that drive to these restaurants? I mean, we already have issues with, for instance, I'll use Derby Street as an example, where it's majority resident parking only. But now we're going to have vehicles driving down there to go to these restaurants or these facilities or these places that it's going to impact the people that live down there coming home, 5 o'clock, dinner time. They want to park around their house, and yet now we have another business that's down there taking up space. Granted, some of the B1 zones, Jefferson Ave or North Street, there is ample parking for some of them. So I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about it in regards to, trash removal. I mean, these are residential neighborhoods. What are they going to do about trash removal? Rodents and stuff like that come along with restaurants. No matter where you are as a restaurant, you end up with that stuff. And I can see the concerns of the residents that live in these areas. But I do agree, we can't hinder new business either, but it's a catch-22. No matter how you look at it, there's pros and cons to everything. But I know I keep hearing, like I said, the walkable, but it's not just going to be walkable. There's going to be people that travel to these restaurants or places that are going to need a place to park. They're going to want, and exactly that. Serving alcohol and liquor. Now you have vehicles that drove to this place, drinking in an establishment, getting back in their vehicle in a residential neighborhood, and leaving after they've had a few drinks. So that's my, my take on it. And it's like I said, I'm torn in both directions. Thank you.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President Presnewski. It is incongruous in my mind to equate increased vehicle traffic when we would be doing this to spread the wealth. There is actually a reduction in vehicle traffic going to limited numbers of establishments in specific neighborhoods when you make it possible to have more of those in your own neighborhood. So although I can hear the concern, the math does not math for me, right? Moreover, trash, deliveries, rodents, every B1 has these businesses already in them. These are already things that are managed by companies that are already there. It's just, I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, and I am frustrated by that argument, because if we make more and we give space, it will reduce some of these concerns. And the mitigation around, and if these areas have resident-only parking, which many of them do, as has been stated, then there's nowhere for people to park when they want to go to those establishments. It's like, here we go. Like, the cycling of logic is not mathing for me. So I guess that's it. I could do this all night.
Any other councilors? Before I open it up for public hearing, I am going to turn it over to Chair Reader and the Planning Board's input on this matter. Mr. Reader.
Thank you, Council President. Are there any members of the Planning Board who wish to comment or ask questions? How about this? Zach?
Thank you, Chair Reader. I do look forward to having the opportunity to discuss these zoning changes. I did send an email back when this was first in front of the City Council with some of my opinions. I am a resident as well inside of one of these B1 zoning districts, right off of Derby Street. At face value, I don't see any sort of problems with allowing this type of use, especially with the additional review that any sort of alcohol license would require. So I do look forward to the discussion. That's it. I don't have any questions.
Anybody else? I share your interest in the topic. We will have a good conversation in the weeks ahead. I simply wanted to point out regarding a walkable community. I happen to live in Councillor Watson-Pelt's district, and when my family walks to and by this specific location on Derby Street, it's about 1.25 miles. We opt not to drive. We walk that whole way, and I think it helps bolster the experience of living in Salem. So I yield back to you, Council President. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Reader. I'll open this now up for public discussion. I believe there are several people in the audience that may want to speak. I'll start on this side of the room, and we'll work around this side of the room. So if you'd like.
If I could, Council President, anyone who's speaking, even though you can hear yourself and people in the room can hear you, eat the microphone so the people in Zoom land can hear you as well, okay?
Simply go up to the podium here.
Yes, please, take the podium and, again, speak very closely to the mic because they won't hear you.
I will.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Hi there. My name is Erin Britt. I am a resident of Salem since 2018. I live in South Salem. As I've been following this B1 issue over the course of the past 6 months, year or so, it's abundantly clear that this is a disruption and a difficulty for small businesses within our community, and it's a disservice to us as residents. Derby Street appears to get a lot of the attention here, but, as Councilor Cohen was mentioning, there are 14 or so other districts that fall into this ordinance that, why? Make it make sense to me. I live over by Venon Square. So in Venon Square, we have Rizzo's. We have a Pilates studio, which I believe under B1 would not be allowed, but it's there. Across the street, we have Fantasy Island, which can serve alcohol, but Rizzo's is the one that suffers because it falls into this B1 category. Let's look at the history of this B1 zoning. 1965, it started in conjunction with being implemented in the most socioeconomically disenfranchised communities. Do we want to continue that trend? Is that a tradition that we want to keep alive in the city of Salem? I personally do not. So from the viewpoint of a resident, I think that this is abhorrent. I think that this is a detriment to small business owners who want to start something new in this city. Why do we want to shut that down? Why do we want to stop free market enterprise from coming to the city of Salem? And as a resident, I want to have a walkable community. I can't walk to downtown easily. I'm not going to with 2 small children. I want to be able to take advantage of things in my little bubble of Salem. What's stopping that from happening? Make it make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from that side of the room would like to speak? Please, if you'd like, state your name and address.
Hi, Phil Laffey, 143 Ford Avenue. I'll make this quick. I'm against this primarily. While I don't necessarily have a dog in the fight, living where I am, I just wonder when enough is enough. As my counselor said, we have over 80 liquor licenses already in Salem. There's actually 89 places where you can go, sit down, have a drink in Salem. Do we need more? I'm not sure. I wonder about those residences in those buildings above these businesses. Commercial recreation, these are two separate categories, as I understand. Commercial recreation and then restaurant with alcohol, correct? So commercial recreation to me sounds very broad. So what does that mean? Can I have a shooting range? That's commercial recreation. That's very loud. Can I have an arcade? Can I have any number of things? So I worry about the noise impacting the neighborhood that's already maybe quieter than something else. Also, when does this end? Does it end here with zoning changes, or do we just keep on going with all sorts of zoning changes and making Salem something completely different than when I moved in here? Which was a long time ago. So I'm against this for a number of reasons. I'm not going to say them all here. I'll send an email. But I just don't think this is right. We don't need more necessarily restaurants. I drive to Tin Whistle because I like it. People are going to drive to another restaurant because they like it. They may walk there as well. And as Councillor Watson-Felt said in the original meeting, this only impacts 2%. She said it again tonight. This only impacts 2% of Salem. So what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. I'd turn that on its head and say, well, it only impacts 2%, so why even do it? It doesn't make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on that side of the room? Okay, we're going to move over. One more.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Tim Draper. I'm a resident of the Derby Street neighborhood historic area. I had a much longer speech prepared, but I'll try to keep this short as well. I'll be very frank. Just to let you all know, I do oppose this change to the B1 zone of the Derby Street neighborhood and kindly ask the council to protect the residential quality of this unique historic area. If I do recall, at the previous meeting, this was something that was recognized by this council, that particular area is unique. It's not a one-size-fits-all compared to some of the other B1 neighborhoods. So that being said, nothing has changed in that 6 months since the board unanimously voted down the same zoning proposal. I please continue to be committed to the goal of ensuring public safety for a number of the reasons that were mentioned tonight for those opposed, as well as the previous meeting. And be committed to the good of ensuring public safety and the welfare of your citizens by again voting no on this proposed zoning change. I ask you to vote down this specific zoning proposal with prejudice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Am I close enough?
Yes, very, very good.
Good evening, councilors. You received an email from me earlier today, but I thought I would also read it aloud to the community. During the August 22nd special council meeting, you unanimously opposed a version of the amended proposed changes. In my opinion, it was a decision that both respected the development of new businesses while also safeguarding the safety and quality of life of some of the residents in the more neighborhood parts of the B1s. The then President Hapworth commended Councillor Drazullo for her efforts on keeping the amendment alive, saying it was a sign of a good ordinance or any good law that not everyone gets everything they want. He thought it was a compromise, that compromise was important, and that this council should not forget that. As I mentioned, I am a resident of the Derby Street neighborhood, and it is a unique in character. Its building stock, noise buffering capabilities, traffic flow, parking, particularly compared to the others. And I hear that argument and I understand. I don't know how you create a compromise where you're addressing a single parcel on Jefferson Street versus a whole neighborhood. That's a tough job, and I really commended your compromise that you reached last time where you were bringing groceries to all those neighborhoods, which is a service that everyone would access. And you were bringing daycare, which is a service that families desperately need. That felt like a compromise that allowed both small businesses to thrive and also address the needs of the residents that live in the neighborhood communities as well as the more urban downtown areas. So thank you for reaching that compromise, and I urge you to, as you did before, continue to respect the differences in those neighborhoods and the safety of the residents. I missed a sentence where these old buildings, they don't have sprinkler systems. Most of them don't have sprinklers. They don't have safeguards that some of the bigger structures have, and that's where I think safety is an important piece to consider as well. So thank you again for your time and have a great evening.
Could you just give your name? For
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
My name is Allison Draper.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, I think we're moving to the other side of the room.
Thank you, Council President. My name is Peg Harrington. I've lived in Salem my entire life. I chose to live in the Derby Street neighborhood when I purchased my home 25 years ago because it is a unique, vibrant, walkable, wonderful neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood. Yes, we know that. It was the first historic neighborhood association in the city. And that's part of its charm. And part of its charm is also the restaurants and shops and boutiques. I hardly ever go to Pickering Wharf. I can walk there in less than 5 minutes. I go to Mercy Tavern. I used to go to the Witch's Brew. Long time ago, I used to go to the No Name Pub when it was a liquor license on the street. It's part of the reason that I chose to buy my home there, and I love it there. I fully support this zoning change. In this particular instance, I'm not familiar with the other questions of the B1, but to equate a neighborhood restaurant that's being run by a young couple with young kids, making the best and creating a really unique neighborhood space with public safety issues on a street that housed what my father used to call bucket of bloods. My mother wouldn't let me walk home from St. Mary's Grammar School down Derby Street because there were so many bars and restaurants and fights on that corner. Derby Street is now a well-preserved, vibrant, walkable neighborhood, and I want it to become more so. The fact that in the October months when I was still working in Boston, my car did not leave my driveway. I walked to the ferry. I got on the ferry, I went to Boston, I came home. The only place I could go to get groceries was the little convenience store at Walio's. There's no decent market there. That's something that we desperately need. To have a local restaurant that has fresh produce available for people, that's a godsend, particularly in October when we can't leave our driveways. I'm fully in favor of this B1 license for the property on Derby Street, and I urge the council and the planning board to consider that strongly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Polly Wilbert, Cedar Street. I'm against adding restaurants with alcohol in the B1. Largely because of the lack of parking. The bulk of these B1 areas in Salem are in dense residential neighborhoods or abutting them. They don't have parking available. There's no reality to the concept that any restaurant with alcohol can survive without customers driving to them in this city. There's just an economic necessity for insurance purposes, employee purposes, the product that you have to sell, your cost is such that you have to have a larger market than a walkable area for your economic survival. That's one of the reasons that many restaurants never make it beyond a year. It's a myth that that most restaurants can survive only on walkable customers. In addition, there's noise and trash that impacts the residential neighborhoods that are surrounding these kinds of venues, and I see it in October when, because of my being close to downtown, the surge of visitors impacts my street and my neighborhood. In addition, when we issue these kinds of licenses, first it's the alcohol, then it's music, then it's outdoor seating, then it's expanded hours. It doesn't stop. Since 1981, I have lived across the street from two B1s that are on Lafayette Street. From one of them, the Busy Nail Salon has all of their employees park on my street from 9:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night, 6 days a week. That's already an impact that we have from one busy establishment in one part of a B1. Across the street in the other B1, it went from a quiet business-focused strip area to one of the busiest gas stations in the city that serves not only downtown and South Salem, but a large number of customers from Marblehead. It's made our intersection in our part of Lafayette Street a dangerous challenge to navigate. Under the present zoning allowance for B1, I and my neighbors already suffer a significant negative impact from what's allowed in B1. Don't please make it worse for us by adding restaurants with alcohol. Let's make this a case of haves and have-nots. Largely the B1s are in working class neighborhoods. The rest of the city is protected because they don't have the B1 adjacent to them. I'd appreciate your consideration for people who live in these areas and the realities of the conditions that come with alcohol for a restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Caitlin Halapa. I live on Boston Street, way out near the Peabody line. And can I just say, can we celebrate how Salem is turning 400? It's a miracle, because the automobile was only invented 100 years ago. How did we survive 300 years with everyone walking all over the place? It's a miracle. Truly, we're so special. It takes me about maybe 20 minutes to walk down here. I could drive. That's probably easier. I don't like driving. It makes me feel isolated. I know a lot of other folks feel the same. It would be great. I don't think Boston Street in that neighborhood is anywhere in this ordinance, but it'd be great to see some of that extend out that way as well, so I don't have to walk quite so far to get to a restaurant. And because really everyone uses that whole area as a thoroughfare, right? Bridge Street and Boston Street, and there are no restaurants, and it's mostly residential. Honestly, walking around at night doesn't feel the safest. I'd much rather walk down Derby Street or down Washington Street at night than down Boston Street. Just there's no one around. It doesn't feel safe. And businesses would help that a lot. I hear all the points about parking. You know, I think doing this sort of thing and the continued commitment the city has to building out the multi-path infrastructure, bike infrastructure, maintaining it during the winter, would really help with a lot of that. You know, people are still going to drive for sure. Maybe doing things like extending parking meters beyond like 6 p.m. would help with some of that. Encourage people to walk maybe instead of paying for extra parking, maybe raising the parking limit, the parking fee. unfair rather. And I feel like there's probably ways to address the resident parking. We do that in October a lot, right? We give out parking passes for people that are supposed to be residents in certain areas. Why not extend that the rest of the year? I hear a lot of the concerns. I hear a lot of the frustrations about expanding commercial zoning into residential neighborhoods, but there's ways to solve all of those problems that are a bit creative. Maybe not the thing that we've always done, but the way that we've always done things has led to a housing crisis and a climate crisis and a bunch of other problems, traffic. Maybe we should be thinking of new ideas. So I support this. I support any future things that would expand commercial zoning into some residential neighborhoods with reason. It should be looked at. There should be a process. But there's also many, many, many solutions to these problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lydia King. I'm at 4 Forest Avenue between Lafayette and Canal Street. On Valentine's Day, last Friday, my fiance and I wanted to go to dinner, like a lot of people in this room. We also, probably like a lot of people, didn't have a reservation somewhere downtown or somewhere in Boston because, you know, life got in the way, we worked late, whatever. We just didn't have a plan. We both wanted to have a drink. We wanted to walk. And my fiance has dietary restrictions, which meant the nearest place we could walk from our place on Forest Ave was 30 minutes away at the Tin Whistle. So we walked 30 minutes each way along a lot of really, really icy, slick sidewalks just to go to a place so we could both have a drink on Valentine's Day and meet his dietary restrictions so he could eat. Having variety and choice all over Salem helps everyone. It is an accessibility issue on many fronts, as well as a quality of life issue. I hear people's objections, and it's pretty clear that most of those objections are on the basis of a specific property or on the basis of some specific piece of what this zoning could allow for a specific business, right? They're one-off objections. This is not, the change to the zoning that is being proposed is not going to a by right ability to have all of these changes, right? It is still a zoning special permit, right? They would still need to get approval for the specifics of every single project that gets impacted by this, would still have to have a specific special permit that would have like a conversation and hearings and all sorts of things. So, I mean, those are, I don't necessarily agree with all those objections, but there's some valid ones, and that's why we have the special permit process. That would all still be available and accessible. So I don't really understand taking this opportunity away from the entire city and every B1 because of this one-off objection you have when it's built into the process that you can talk about one-off objections. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I'm in favor of the B1, and I think it'd be good for the city.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Seeing none. Councilor Cohen. Oh, I'm sorry. Zoom, we have someone on Zoom? We do have one person on Zoom. Okay. Mr. Steve Kapantis, can you speak up?
I can. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if I'm in favor or against this, but the entire process really brings a question up that I think should be addressed. When I look at that table, there's a lot of other uses that aren't being considered tonight. I think tonight this is about a restaurant with alcohol and indoor recreation. There are other uses: hotel, inn, outdoor recreation, marijuana testing facility, marijuana retailer. So my question is, this leaves the appearance that this is a in-kind favor for one person that wants to open a restaurant, and I don't think that's how our process should work. If you're going to do this, why don't you open it up and look at everything in the table and consider how everything should be changed instead of doing it for one person. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else in Zoom land? Seeing none. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Prosnowski. I'm going to be brief. This was actually not put up by the city council. It was put up by the mayor. And this was, the mayor actually spoke about some of the things that some of the people in the room spoke about, having vibrant neighborhoods all through the city. I do want to address some comments about the last meeting where we voted to approve 3 out of the 5 conditions. This was not a compromise. I will also commend the good Ward 1, Councilor Jerslow, because it looked like we had kind of, got into quicksand, and that vote enabled 3 out of the 5 conditions to be approved. And so I didn't vote against this. As I think all my colleagues, we voted to pass those. And I think that was really a good political move. And I do want to say this is a high bar. This is zoning. It requires a supermajority. It requires, as Councilor Morcillo said, a process where we have to have this meeting, and then the planning board does a pirouette or two, and then it, eventually comes back and we consider what they recommend or don't. And then we go through this again. And every one of these steps, there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in. And then in the event, if we did approve these 2 pieces, these 2 components, all the board meetings, the zoning board and the licensing board also allows public testimony. And so there's, one of the really cool things about our process is how transparent and democratic it is and allows people to participate. But I just want to be clear that, we didn't necessarily vote something down. Councilor Jerzo made a motion that enabled us to actually move, some things forward. And I brought this back because I want all the things to go forward. Thank you.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President Prosnowski. I was going to say the exact same thing as Councilor Cohen about not having unanimously voted down anything, because that is not how that process went. And I am grateful to Councilor Cohen for bringing this back again. I was supported in it then. I'm supportive of it now. And so to be clear, voting for something that is amended, where we removed something, is not unanimously voting down anything. So that's not quite the right perspective from a public process view in my mind. I agree that there seems to be one concerning, quotes, area that has got people worried. And the idea that was raised around separating that from another area, that, as far as I am aware, is not legal. That's called spot zoning, and it's not legal. So we can't do that, right? That's why we employ a process around the Board of Appeals, right? That's why we have a licensing board. That's why we have all of these other stops along the way to enable more public engagement, more public conversation, to raise concerns about specific areas, specific business uses in specific places on a one-at-a-time basis. That is the only legal way, as I understand it, to address concerns when it comes to making changes to the zoning table. It has to be equal, right? The other thing we haven't really laid into tonight that I just want to remind everybody is that, the zoning borders are invisible lines across streets, right? Like when we talk about, I think Councilor Cohen raised the example of the Babe, which was forever Major McLeish's, where I have spent many hours of my time. That is across the street from a B1. That business is a by right business, as I understand it, in that zone. That a business owner across the street is not being given the same opportunity to exercise. And it is the same neighborhood. It is the same place. They are the same group of residents. So when we think about these zoning borders, for 2% of the commercial parcels in the entire city, I just encourage everyone to remember that abutting properties it's as invisible as as a little fence. That's how I perceive it. And I think if you take an equitable approach to the open market and how businesses can and should be able to open in a city, because this is a city, Salem is a city, I don't understand why, I just think it doesn't make sense to me to lean on those. There was a point raised tonight about economic survival. And, respectfully, I think they're fair points. I don't know, right, if say tomorrow everyone gets whitelisted, everyone opens a liquor serving restaurant in a B1 zone, blows up all over Salem. Economic survival is not determined by anybody in this room, right? Economic survival is determined by the open market. And if people are going to go there on foot, maybe in a vehicle, then perhaps it survives. If they don't, then it doesn't, and it closes. That's the way of things. So I just wanted to offer a couple additional thoughts and some clarification points there about what we are legally allowed to do here in this room. The way we conduct public process and public conversation, and the good compromise I do agree we came to last summer. The concept of abutting properties in a 7 square mile city where we have all these weird, in my opinion, invisible lines. The stop gaps that we have in place in a process to ensure the protection of certain parts of our city, right? Historic Commission being one of them, right? The Planning Board being one of them. There's a lot of them. That's it. I appreciate everyone's public comment. I appreciate especially public comment that was submitted in writing and shared with us outside of this room tonight, because I do want to reiterate as well that participation in this room is wonderful and we love it. It gets lonely in here when it's just us. But it is not the only way to engage in your public process. It's not the only way to have your voice heard. And I encourage everyone to continue to leverage the email and the dial-in means of communication and participation, if that's what you're able to do. I'd rather the public participate than not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Prosnewski, and I appreciate the additional comments by my colleagues on this. And very quickly, I wanted to just mention my appreciation for pointing out the accessibility and equity issues that are here as well. These arbitrary lines that exist where one resident, one neighbor might be free to have a business that the one very close by does not. And also for the many younger people that I know that have moved to Salem in the last couple of years, I know very few that can afford to own a car. So many are walking 30 minutes to try to go somewhere, because I just don't know many that even have a car. So that is an important point made as well for access. I just wanted to highlight that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the City Council? Chair Reader, I turn it over to you for the option of any of your board to speak.
Thank you, Council President Prosnewski. Are there any final comments from the Planning Board? Seeing none, I'll return it to you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, President Prosnewski. Are you suggesting about adjourning the meeting?
I am suggesting that you move to
I'm sorry.
Close the public hearing.
Thanks for calling on me for that. I move that we close the public hearing.
Councilor Cohen moves that the public hearing be closed, seconded by Councilor Watson-Felt. All those in favor? Chair Reader?
Thank you, Council President. I'm looking for a motion from the Planning Board to close the public hearing.
Second.
So by Jonathan and by Helen, and we are obligated to do a roll call vote. So I will start with Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Yes. Jonathan?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Kurt? Yes. The public hearing portion of the planning board is closed.
And the public hearing is closed. Councilor Cohen?
I think I'll get this one right. Thank you, President Prosniewski. I am moving that this matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation.
Councilor Cohen moves that this matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation, and I believe that is done in 21 days, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Mr. Reader?
Correct.
Correct. Councilor Cohen's motion from the City Council. All those in favor? All those opposed? Seeing none, passes City Council. Councilor Morcillo.
I move to adjourn.
Councilor Morcillo moves to adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
And for the planning board, correct.
Council President, the planning board, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Made by Jonathan, seconded by Helen. Looking for a roll call vote from Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Counter.
Yes.
Ms. Sides.
Yes.
And Kurt Reader. Yes. We are adjourned for the planning board.
Thank you. This joint public hearing is now adjourned.